Good morning. This is the fourth lecture in our subject engineering thermodynamics, and in this class I propose to move on to the first law of thermodynamics. Because we have completed zeroth law of thermodynamics, we have defined heat and temperature the way they should be defined, and now we are in a position to move to the next law of thermodynamics, that is the first law. But before we start first law, I would like to tell you a few basic things. The study of thermodynamics that we are making now is with an approach of microscopic study. Thermodynamics can be studied either with a macroscopic approach or with a microscopic approach. What is the difference? Difference is that when you are considering the changes taking place at the molecular level, the energies, the properties different at molecular level, then we say it is microscopic approach. But when you are taking a bulk of the system, say 5 kg, 10 kg, 10 tons, 20 quintals, like that, the mass of the system is considered, not the individual molecules, then the approach will be called macroscopic. Normally, the scientists, the physicists, the chemists, the life scientists, they study the thermodynamics with a microscopic approach. They study things that happen at the molecular level, the changes that happen in the molecular level. But as engineer, we deal with large amount of the system, and therefore our approach is always macroscopic. So we do not consider the changes that are taking place at the electron, proton, neutron level. We only take the changes at the bulk level. So our approach is macroscopic approach. MACROSCOPI. So there is a macroscopic approach and there is a microscopic approach. Similarly, when we will consider, because this concept will be required in the first law of thermodynamics, when we will be determining or estimating the energy stored in a system, we have to see what are the different modes of energy stored or different modes of stored energy. So there can be, energy can be stored in the macroscopic form or in the microscopic form. So macroscopic mode of energy storing and microscopic mode of energy storing. So that we will discuss what are they. So energy stored in a system. Energy stored in a system. So say for example there is a container and this container contains some gas molecules, say 10 kg of oxygen. So according to our definition of system is a fixed quantity of matter or a fixed region in space. So it is a fixed quantity of matter, 10 kg of oxygen contained in a container, and the molecules are there and it weighs 10 kg, right? So this is a system. Now what are the modes by which energy is stored in the system? Now if you say, if the whole box having a mass 10 kg or containing a gas of mass 10 kg is moving with a velocity v, then it must be possessing a kinetic energy which is equal to half mv square, where m is the mass of the system and v is the velocity with which the whole bulk is moving. When we say that this system is at an height h or z from the reference point, then it must also be possessing some potential energy, and that potential energy will be mg z. Z is for the height from the datum surface. So this contains this. Apart from these two form of energy, the system also contains some energy which are to be examined at the molecular level. Okay, what is that? So we'll discuss. See, according to kinetic theory of gases, you know, each molecule, they move with certain velocity. I am now not considering the movement of the container. I am considering the movement of the each molecule. Each molecule are moving. You know, according to kinetic theory of gases, the molecules are not stationary. If you observe a molecule, that the molecule is moving with a zigzag motion. Okay, so there is rectilinear motion, haphazard motion like this called Brownian motion. Okay, so this much we know, but we also need to know that the molecules not only move with linear motions and collide with the wall, collide with other molecules and all that, they also move, they also rotate about their own axis. So there is a spinning action also for the molecules. So the molecules, they do spin and they also vibrate. So the molecules have three modes of movement: linear or translational, rotational and also vibrational. And you know, whenever there is a movement, there is a kinetic energy associated with this. So if you consider one molecule, so if I consider just one molecule, then energy of that molecule, because of that translational motion, this is the kinetic energy, will be E translational. Energy of that molecule because of the rotational motion will be E rotational. The energy of that molecule because of vibration is vibrational kinetic energy, epsilon by. Then apart from this, the molecule will also possess some electronic energy. The molecules will also possess some nuclear energy. So if you take the sum of all the form of energy that one single molecule possesses, then that will be the molecular internal energy of one molecule, or simply internal energy. So this is internal energy of one molecule. Alright. Now if you have n molecules here, n number of molecules here in this bulk of system, then what is the total internal energy? Total internal energy will be n times epsilon, let us call it U. So what is this? This, can you now see this? This is the total internal molecular energy of one molecule. That is the sum of the individual translational kinetic energy, rotational kinetic energy, vibrational kinetic energy, the electronic energy and the nuclear energy of one molecule. Now if there is n number of such molecules, then the total energy that this bulk of system possesses at the molecular level is U, and this U is called the molecular internal energy or simply internal energy. So this is molecular internal energy or simply internal energy. So that is called U, and this U is n epsilon. Alright. Now these are the three forms of energy that are stored in the system, and out of this, here we are not considering at the molecular level, here we are considering the energy of each molecule. So this is the macroscopic mode of stored energy, and this is the microscopic mode of stored energy. So total energy possessed by a system is the sum of its kinetic energy of the whole bulk, the potential energy and also the molecular internal energy. Now taking a simplified case, where the motion and gravity are absent. So in the absence of motion and gravity, the total energy stored by the system or stored in the system is, this will be 0 because there is no motion, this will be 0 because there is no gravity, so it will be same as the total molecular internal energy or simply internal energy. So this is your internal energy. So internal energy is a energy that is possessed by a system. Okay, it can be a gas system, it can be a liquid system, so it is possessed by a system. That is a system's internal energy. Alright, and if you try to recall, this internal energy is coming in the list of those 8 thermodynamic properties that I told in my first lecture. Okay, so how many thermodynamic properties are there? There are 8 thermodynamic properties: pressure, volume, temperature, internal energy, enthalpy, entropy, Gibbs function and Helmholtz function. So internal energy is very much there in the list. So it is a system property or thermodynamic property, and like any other property, this is also a point function. Like work is a path function, these are not path functions, these are all point functions because they depend on the path, they depend only on the end points, not on the path. With this knowledge, we will move on to the first law of thermodynamics. First law of thermodynamics is something that you already know, and if I remember, in the last class I told that first law of thermodynamics is nothing but essentially the law of conservation of energy. What is Bernoulli's theorem? Bernoulli's theorem is also a form of conservation of energy. Okay, so when a fluid flow is considered, energy at any particular point is always same, or there is no destruction or creation of energy. That's what Bernoulli's equation speaks of. So similarly, when this law of conservation of energy is applied to a thermodynamic activity, we called it the law of thermodynamics. Okay, and more precisely it is called first law of thermodynamics. So if I ask you what is first law of thermodynamics, you will give me answers, I know, like correlating the work and heat, correlating the heat and internal energy, correlating work and internal energy, or all the three together. Okay, so that particular statement which you must be thinking of speaking out is valid only for a particular situation. It holds good only for a particular situation, and it is not a general statement. So first law of thermodynamics, unlike how we have stated in our lower classes, we will be stating in a different way now. So we will be splitting it into 3 different types of activities, and for each activity we will be stating first law of thermodynamics. So first we will make the statement of first law of thermodynamics for a closed system, and then for an open system or flow process. You know, open system is a flow process and closed system is a non-flow process because there is no flow of mass across the boundary of the system, right? So first we will be doing first law of thermodynamics for a closed system. And you know what a closed system is. It's a fixed quantity of matter and there is no mass transfer taking place across the boundary. And this closed system, when we will be making a statement for closed system, we will again split into 2 different activities that a closed system might undergo. One is, a closed system may undergo a thermodynamic process or it may undergo a thermodynamic cycle. Now, when it undergoes a thermodynamic process, what will be the statement of first law of thermodynamics? And when it will undergo a cyclic process or a cycle, what will be the statement in that situation? So 2 different statements we will be making. The first one is first law of thermodynamics for a closed system undergoing a thermodynamic process. It says that, let me first make the statement and then I will explain. it says that when a system undergoes a thermodynamic process, the amount of heat transfer is equal to the algebraic sum of the work transfer and the change in internal energy of the system during the process. So let me repeat the statement. In a thermodynamic process, the amount of heat transfer is the algebraic sum of the work transfer and the change in internal energy of the system during the process. So there are three things. In a thermodynamic process, the amount of heat transfer Q is the algebraic sum. It is not a vector sum, it is an algebraic sum. So algebraic sum of the work transfer and change in internal energy of the system during the process. So mathematically I can express this statement by this equation. What is Q? Q is the heat transfer taking place during the process. W is the work transfer taking place during the process. And what is delta U? Delta U is, this is change in internal energy. Change in internal energy. Internal energy of what? Internal energy of the system during the process. Means what was the final internal energy and what was the initial internal energy, the difference of these two. That is the change in internal energy of the system during the process. Right. Now you can see, if I schematically represent a process by a path like this, 1 to 2, say this is some property here, 1 to 2, then what is happening? Initial state point is 1, the final point is 2, and the system is migrating from the initial state to the final state along a path 1, 2, and the direction of occurrence is shown by the arrow here. Is that clear? Now during this process, let the amount of heat transfer is Q. Let the amount of heat transfer is Q. And let the work associated with this process is W. Work associated with this process is W. And in that case, according to the first law, which is nothing but a conservation of energy statement, W plus change in internal energy. What is the change in internal energy? Internal energy at point 2 minus internal energy at point 1. The difference is always taken as the final minus initial. So final minus initial. And internal energy, does it depend on path? No, it does not depend on path. Even if you do not know the path, the change in internal energy is going to be U2 minus U1. Irrespective of path, even if the path is like this, the change in internal energy will be 2 minus 1. Right? U2 minus U1. So I am writing U2 minus U1. So I want to make certain clarifications here. Now see, I am telling that Q is the heat transfer in the process. That means I am not telling it is the amount of heat supplied to the system, or it is the amount of heat given out of the system, or whether the heat transfer is 0 in that system. I am silent about it because I have made a general statement. General statement is Q is the algebraic sum of W and change in U. So Q is heat transfer. So Q can be heat supplied, heat transfer can be positive heat, can be negative heat, can be 0. There are 3 possibilities. Okay. So about that I am silent. Whatever will be the nature of heat transfer, this equation will hold good. This equation will hold good. Now Q can be positive, that means heat can be supplied, heat can be rejected by the system, and there can be no heat supply or no heat rejection. So it is a process without any heat transfer. What kind of process is that? A process without heat transfer is an adiabatic process. It can be an adiabatic process. Similarly, I say heat transfer is equal to work transfer plus this. So work transfer is, I don't say it is work done by the system or on the system. So work can be done by the system, maybe it is a work done on the system, or maybe it is neither a work done by the system or not on the system. That means it is neither an expansion process nor a compression process. It is a process in which volume remains constant and amount of work is 0. So that is also possible. 0. So there are three possibilities here. And what about change in internal energy? Change in internal energy can also have three possibilities. It is possible that there is no change in internal energy. That means U1 and U2 are same. So that is also possible. So in that case, change in internal energy is 0. It is possible that the internal energy will increase. That means U2 is greater than U1. And this is also possible that the internal energy will decrease. So there are three possibilities with as far as the value of nature of Q is concerned. There are three possibilities as far as the nature of W is concerned, and there are three possibilities for change in internal energy. So there are many possibilities, but the statement is a general statement. That's why while making a statement on first law of thermodynamics, I don't say heat supply is equal to work done plus the change in internal energy. No. Sometimes we are tempted to say in a process the total amount of heat we supply is same as the work done by the system plus the increase in internal energy. So there we are only making a limited situation. We are only citing a specific situation where heat is supplied. That means this is positive. Work is done by. That means this is by. And then internal energy is increasing. That means increasing. So this is only out of this all possibilities. The only one possibility we are telling. So let us make a general statement that first law of thermodynamics says that in a thermodynamic process, heat transfer is equal to work transfer. I am telling transfer, not transfer to or from. Work transfer plus the change in internal energy. So if you are clear about this, then you can analyze any thermodynamic process where some heat interaction and work interactions are taking place. And if you look at the equation, what is this? Say for example you say Q is equal to W plus U2 minus U1, right? Now what is this? This is a form of energy. This is a form of energy. This is a form of energy. So as far as the units are concerned, what will be the unit of Q? It will be joules or kilojoules or in megajoules. W same unit, joules kilojoules. U2 minus U1 internal energy का unit क्या होगा? वही होगा, because it is a form of energy. Its units will be joules, megajoules, kilojoules. So they all will be having the same units. First of all, second thing, suppose in a system, say 100 kilojoules is the work transfer at plus 100. That means I have supplied 100 kilojoules of heat to the system. Then 70 kilojoules of work is done by the system. 70 kilojoules of work is done by the system. So it will be plus 70. So if this is plus 100 and this is plus 70, what will be U2 minus U1? Will be plus 30. That means U2 is greater than U1 by 30 joules or kilojoules. That means this is a process in which heat is supplied, work is done by the system, positive work, and the internal energy is increasing by 30 joules. Okay, that means if 100 joules of heat is supplied, then 70 joules is utilized in doing the work and 30 joules is stored in the system in the form of internal energy. 70 plus 30 is 100, so energy is conserved. There is no destruction of energy. Energy doesn't vanish from the activity, from the whole domain, and the total energy remains same. Now, if you take another case, suppose this is an adiabatic process. This is an adiabatic process in which in the last class we have found out an expression for work done in the adiabatic process. Suppose I am giving you some data using which you found out the work done by the system in an adiabatic process to be 50 kilojoules. So 50 kilojoules work done by the system. So this is 50. Now this is an adiabatic process. Remember, if it is an adiabatic process, what is the amount of heat transfer taking place between the system and surrounding? 0. No heat transfer, 0. So if 0 and this is 50, then 0 is equal to plus 50 plus minus 50. So automatically the change in internal energy has to be minus 50 kilojoules. Has to be minus 50 kilojoules. Now what is this? U2 minus U1 is minus 50 kilojoules. That means U1 is U2 plus 50 kilojoules. That means the internal energy of the system has gone down by 50 kilojoules. U1 is greater and U2 is smaller, and it is greater by 50 joules. That means whatever internal energy was whatever energy was stored, molecular energy was stored in the system, now that value has gone down by 50, and that 50 has not gone anywhere. That 50 has appeared as the mechanical work done by the system, and this whole thing is unadded by any kind of external heat flow, because the external heat flow is 0. So like this you can analyze any thermodynamic process. Where the heat transfer and work transfers are known to you. So first law of thermodynamics for a closed system undergoing a thermodynamic process. Q is equal to W plus U2 minus U1. And remember one thing here, that W is a quantity that depends on the path. U1 and U2 are quantities that do not depend on the path, they are point functions. Alright. So irrespective of the path followed between 1 and 2, U2 minus U1 is going to be constant. There is no change in U2 minus U1. U2 minus U1 remains same even if the system changes its path, as long as the initial state is 1 and final state is 2. Now take a cyclic process. Now take a process 1 to 2. We are going to make now the second thing, a closed system undergoing a thermodynamic cycle. For this we are going to state the first law of thermodynamics. So for that what I do, I take a process first, and this process is path is A. So I will write by now I know the statement for a process. So I can write the equation. So I can write Q12 is equal to W12 plus U2 minus U1. I can write this because I know the first law of thermodynamics for a process. The process is Q12, W12, U2 minus U1. Now what is Q12? Q12 is the heat transfer along the process 1 to 2. W12 is the work transfer along the process 1 to 2. Now if I take another process 2 to 1 in such a way that the initial point and final points are now same, and this path 1 to 2 and 2 to 1, these two paths together, they constitute a thermodynamic cycle. Okay, so this is a cycle now, where initial point is 1, the final point is also 1, and this is a cycle which consists of two processes. So for the second process, now imagine that this process is not there, only process 2 to 1 is there. So for that you can write Q21 is equal to W21 is equal to what? The final internal energy minus initial internal energy. So in this case final is 1 and initial is 2. So if you add these two, then you will get Q12 plus Q21 is equal to W12 plus W21, and this U2 and U1 gets cancelled there. So you get this, and you cannot cancel W12 and W21 because the paths are different, the work values are also different. And now you can see this is not depending on the path, this is depending on the path, So this plus the must be depending on the path. So Q is also a quantity which can be called a path function. Depends on path. It depends on path. So Q is also a path function like W, whereas internal energy U is not a path function, it is a point function like pressure, like volume, like temperature and so on. All the thermodynamic properties are point functions. Is that clear? So how can I make a general statement for this? Now this is I gave you an example of a cycle consisting of two processes. Okay. If there are cycles for 3 processes, suppose there is a process 2 to 3 and there is another process 3 to 1. So in that case, what will be the equation? Q12 plus Q12 is equal to W12 plus U1 U2 minus U1. Q23 is equal to W23 plus U3 minus U2, and Q31 is equal to W31 plus U1 minus U3. Okay, 3 processes. For every process we can write the first law equation, and if you add them all you get a resultant equation that will not carrying the U term. So Q12 plus Q23 plus Q31 is equal to W12 plus W23 plus W31. Now here you see Q12 plus Q21 is W12 plus W21. So there are 2 processes, so there are 2 Q terms and 2 W terms. There are 3 processes, so you have 3 Q terms and 3 W terms. And in both the equation you will find the U term is not there. The internal energy term is not there. And that is very obvious because it is a cyclic process. The system comes back to the initial state finally. So the point functions do not change over a cycle because same U1 and final is also same U1. So U1 minus U1 is 0. So there is no change in the properties of the system in a cyclic process or in a cycle. Therefore, the term U does not appear in neither in this equation nor in this equation. Or if you write the equations for a 4 process cycle, then also U will not be appearing there. So to make a general statement, I can say for a closed system undergoing a cycle, and you know a cycle consists of a number of processes. So we can make a general statement that first law of thermodynamics, first law for a closed system undergoing a cycle is Q is equal to W, or summation of all the Q terms in the cycle is equal to summation of all the work terms in the cycle. So if a cycle consists of 3 processes, there will be 3 Q terms, QA, QB, QC, and 3 W terms, WA, WB, WC. And if you take the sum of all the 3 Qs with their respective positive and negative signs, of course, and if you take the sum of all the Ws, take their positive and negative signs as per the description of the problem, then you will find that the sum of all the Q terms is equal to sum of all the W terms. That means, and what is this? If you put it in words, then that will become the first law statement for a closed system undergoing a thermodynamic cycle. If you put it in words, then in a cycle, the net heat transfer is equal to the net work transfer. So in a cycle, the net heat transfer is equal to the net work transfer. Net means heat transfer means one heat transfer. Net heat transfer means If there are several heat quantities, then the net sum of all the heat amounts, heat quantities, heat terms. So net sum of all the work terms. Okay. So net heat transfer is equal to net work transfer. So this is your first law of thermodynamics applied to a closed system undergoing a process and undergoing a cycle. So this was for today. Next class we will try to discuss little more on these two equations. Thank you. This much for today.